And now it's time to hear from our panel. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Jane Lin, Professor of Civil Materials and Environmental Engineering at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Stephen Moelk, Project Implementation Manager of Zero Emission Delivery Initiatives at IKEA, cool store. Russell Musgrove, Managing Director of Global Vehicles at FedEx Express. And Jimmy O'Day, Deputy Director of Trucks at CALSTART, a nonprofit that works with businesses and governments to develop clean transportation solutions. Welcome to you all. So this is a big topic, EV trucks, what's going on. But let me just start out with Jane and ask an innocent question, trying to think of our audience that's listening to this right now and understanding why this is happening. Why are EV vehicles coming online? What's the big driver? What is the big driver as you see it?
So obviously the climate change is the big driver, right, for zero emission vehicles. And we know that transportation is the main contributors to the CO2 emissions and this greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants. So in the past many decades, the Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) has really put in effort to curb the vehicle emissions, particularly focusing on the passenger vehicles. But I think now it's time to maybe shift the focus, or not. I mean, obviously not entirely. We still have to do, work on the passenger vehicles. But now I think it's time to probably shift some focus on the electric trucks, the electrification of trucks.
And so when it comes, we're going to be discussing, fleets and the large scale deployment of EVs. When it comes to a scale of like 1 to 10 in the United States, and 10 being the maximum, like we've done the transition. Where is the United States now in that journey, Jane?
In terms of the electrification of trucks, or
trucks and fleets. I mean, I'm just interested, is this the very beginning of the journey? Are we midway through the journey? My sense is EVs are here. I'm just wondering, I know that there are challenges when it comes to who makes the trucks, where the batteries come from, a lot of different dimensions. But I'm just interested in the transition issues of where, to give our audience an understanding of where we are in the journey. Are we early? Are we mid? Are we late?
We're very early in the journey in terms of electrification of trucks. So the passenger EVs is a little bit better, but we're very much at the very beginning.
Excellent. Russell, I can't imagine anybody bigger. Maybe IKEA is, I'm not sure yet. But when it comes to FedEx and you think about fleets and EV transitions, you must be in the middle of it. Let me ask you the same question. As you look at what you're trying to do with carbon emissions targets and getting to, what your company has pledged to, why has the transition of the fleets become such a high priority for you?
So we're actually in a really good place right now, because for the first time, we've been dabbling in the electrification space for about 10 or 12 years. And for the first time, the economics and the actual technologies come to play. So we've been dabbling for a number of years, and now we're at the point where we're ready to scale. So we're truly at a place where pickup and delivery fleet on its face is the right duty cycle and the right type of fleet to be able to expedite and scale electrification across the board. It ties into our 2040 zero emissions, carbon neutrality goals. And at the same time, the technologies came so far that we're ready now to move away from science projects into a full-scale execution of a scaled electrification strategy globally.
And how much of this, I've talked to your CEO before, Fred Smith, about his obsession with energy independence in America and finding ways that we can decrease dependence. When it comes to marrying both domestically produced electricity and energy married to carbon neutral or carbon zero strategies within the kind of empire of FedEx, do you need anything more from government, or do you have it pretty much all squared away?
Well, one of the things that's different for fleets, and a lot of times people forget, when you're putting in a vehicle in your garage, it's the equivalent of putting a dryer plug in your house, right? So basically, it's a really small project. when you start looking at electrification for a company like FedEx at the scale we're talking about globally, where you're putting in a dryer plug, when I put in electric vehicles into one of our stations, because we do charge internally, it's the equivalent of me building a small subdivision inside of a building. So one of the keys for us is to continue to work with our utility partners and other regulatory agencies to make sure that we, in fact, can get the energy available to us. We also have to look, unfortunately, around the world for our, generating our own energy where it makes sense. We do some of that out in California now with solar and bloom boxes and such, to where we can expand and use microgrid technology to offset any vacancies we have. But at the end of the day, energy independence is a key component to our thinking for many years. It's kind of what started this journey. The good news is we're the perfect type of fleet to be able to do that home delivery, last mile kind of fleet in the pickup and delivery space, which pushed us to our current goal of, by 2025, 50% of our purchases globally of our pickup and delivery fleet will be electric, and then by 2030, 100%, giving us a full electric fleet by 2040. So it's a really exciting time. And fortunately, from a sheer physics perspective, we're in a good place in most of the industrialized world. The U.S. is in a good place. The hardest part is there's thousands of utilities, and getting them all in alignment with what we're trying to do with generation, distribution, and of course the transmission, and making sure that we have viable infrastructure where we're trying to put our facilities.
And Stephen, thank you for that, Russell. Stephen, you're already running EV vehicles, as I understand, in New York, about 40 of them, and we're talking, about a much bigger scale thing here. But, I guess when you're sort of looking at it, one question I sort of have is, what would the world look like if this didn't happen, I guess? I mean, part of me asked, if we weren't going that direction, how screwed would we be? But on the other side, how easy is it to make the transition from IKEA's perspective? A lot of the transition challenges are in part caused because not everything is under a FedEx or under a single brand. You have a lot of independent contractors out there that are running their own system. But give us a perspective on how you see the transition.
Sure. I mean, on one hand, Russell's 100% correct. I mean, the type of fleet that we're talking about, the home delivery fleet, makes a lot of sense for electrification. The technology exists today for that transition. The challenges that we faced on our side, because we do purchase transportation services from third parties, is how do you get those folks to electrify? And then our service providers use independent contractors, like you said, and so these are kind of small, mom and pop type businesses who are generally undercapitalized and risk averse to stuff like buying the first electric vehicle, for example. And by the way, they have no place to park it. So what we've done is we've employed a rental model where we're providing a rental fleet that the contractors then have access to, that they can access those vehicles on a very short-term basis, a day or a week rental, without having to get involved in a long-term financial entanglement. So it's like I like to use a bowling metaphor. If you have to wear bowling shoes, but if you don't have them, you can rent them from the alley. So that's kind of what we've done with our model, is to place the vehicles and give the contractors access to those vehicles on a short-term basis. So that's kind of how we've solved that problem. And then on the infrastructure side, because again we use third parties, we're going to be lighting up more and more of our stores to be able to handle fleet charging, with the hope that eventually our service providers themselves will kind of get on board and start lighting up their own facilities and then offering zero emission delivery to all of their customers, which would benefit all of us.
Fascinating. Jimmy, I mean, I'm fascinated by CALSTART, and I guess, I've been sort of watching, as we all have, the kind of buildup of interest and commitments, and you're talking about a complex ecosystem where lots of different parts of the ecosystem need to be moved to get scale when it comes to electrification and zero emission vehicles out there. But tell us how CALSTART is affecting, changing the environment, in California and elsewhere. I know you've been at the Union of Concerned Scientists, and so you can imagine, how do you go from theory to practice and execution in such a complex space?
Yeah, absolutely. CALSTART is really positioned well as an organization that has 250 plus member companies that are really on the front lines of getting this electric technology on the road. And we hear from these fleets, we hear from the OEMs making these trucks, where they're at, what challenges they have, what needs they have. And we go and try to get policies and solutions to help realize this vision that we all share. We are embarking on a new program to really help these small fleets that Stephen mentioned that have challenges that maybe larger fleets don't, to provide resources to get over the information gap and the knowledge gap that a small fleet really doesn't have the time or resources to devote to. So that's a really exciting new program we're launching, Transforming Trucks, Transforming Communities.
And do you have the policy tools you need to get the kind of level of transition you need, or are there missing pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, that you think still need to be put in place?
We know what we need. We know what puzzle pieces exist. We need to put them into place. One big one in conversation right now are financial incentives for electric trucks going on in the budget reconciliation process. There's proposals for electric truck incentives at the federal level, which would be a huge boon and win for this industry to get off the ground. There's currently no federal incentives for electric trucks. We have them for electric cars. And there's a lot of details you can get into about designing those incentives, that how they work for small fleets versus big fleets, a tax credit versus a rebate on the hood, being different proposals out there. That bottom line, we do need financial incentives to help get this industry off the ground.
Well, thank you. Dr. Lin, I'm interested in whether this period of pandemic, so I actually know folks that are truck drivers, and they call me every once in a while, we have chat, and they're out there on the roads in these fleets, and they're moving around the country, but they are all busy. And if you want to become a truck driver right now, you can make a lot of money. I was worried, these automated vehicles are going to come up, these autonomous vehicles move into trucking, and all my friends are going to lose their jobs. But right now, it's a great time if you're a truck driver. Has the pandemic and the demand for shipped goods and products and everything that Russell's company is doing, has that gotten in the way of the transition? Because it seems to me that the capacity probably has the use of the capacity in the U.S. has probably risen in terms of traditional fuel models. But has that gotten in the way of the transition, or is it helping in any way to make the transition to EVs easier?
I actually think it may help. I think that there's the incentive, the market incentive to really help electrify the fleet, because you're getting more deliveries, from the customers. So, and you want to, save the energy cost and the operating costs and things like that. Maybe using the robot delivery, device. And so I think it's, in my opinion, but I think my colleagues here, they are in the industry, they probably have more to say about this. And in my opinion, I think this actually helps.
Well, let me,
to build a little.
Oh, go ahead, Russell.
To build a little bit on what Jane said, one of the big advantages that's happening right now is, frankly, from a total cost of ownership and energy efficiency perspective, electricity is a very good fuel for automotive use, whether it be light commercial duty, your home, your personal car. The end game here is that to get the total cost of ownership to be equal to diesel equivalent or gas equivalent, and we're not that far away. Any help from an incentive perspective to help push us to that diesel equivalency, the TCO of these types of vehicles, the total cost of ownership, is such that it's actually a very efficient, good use from an energy source perspective. So you get the energy independence that we've talked about earlier, and you also get the benefit of a great sustainable overarching use of energy in general. So to build on what Jane said, it's just a very efficient fuel. It's been around for 100 years, and now it's back to the forefront again, based on battery technologies change the face. But basically, it's a good, cost-effective fleet tool. So someone in the fleet business that wants to reduce their overall total cost of ownership, it's a hard sell, but the reality of it is it's the right decision for fleets to make from a financial perspective, with all this huge benefit and basically the changes we can make around the world and how we can impact the global sustainability efforts.
Russell, before I jump to Jimmy and to our other colleagues, let me ask you. You're managing director of global vehicles, so not just the U.S. You have a global scene that you're in charge of. Kind of looking at fleets.
I do.
Where are you buying these? Where are you buying the fleets? Where are you buying the trucks and parts of your fleet and the batteries? Where is it coming from now today?
So right now today, we've just installed and did infrastructure projects in California. We have 1,000 chargers that are EV ready, and we're going to be the launch customer for BrightDrop, which is a GM product. So those will start hitting the streets in California in December. We're basically are committed right now to 500 of those. I anticipate that number becoming much greater than that as we move forward.
Right.
But here in the U.S., we're looking at OEMs, BrightDrop. There are some startups that we've worked with, but at this time, in the U.S., we're going there. China, we're going with a company called Maxis. So basically, from a global perspective, there's a lot of industry advancement being on. All of the large OEMs have made the commitment. They finally accepted the reality that electricity is going to be a disruptor in their industry, and that they're going to invest literally billions of dollars in the development of these new products. GM is our current partner, but we have different partners around the world. Daimler in Europe, again, Maxis in China. So as we do this from a global perspective, based on the industry and based on the size vehicle, we're kind of purchasing them from all over. So, but most of your OEMs are in place now and have got large EV development programs in place and really moving the technology forward. Now, if we can just beat out this hurdle on utility and make sure that we don't outrun the utility issues, I think that you're gonna really see some movement in this space.
And Stephen, you also have global perspective, and you work for one of the greatest companies in the world that's marketing all over the world. I was just actually on an Alibaba site looking at an IKEA store online, fully 3D in digital form. So, and I ask you again from the global perspective, and let me just put an edge to it. I'm really interested from the U.S. national perspective, whether we're holding our own, against India, against China, and other, Europe, who we just met, or are we behind? And if the United States is behind, do you have concerns about that? And I know that's not your job, but I know you have insights into how this new arena is evolving. Because I think part of this question, the reason people are watching this today, is maybe the United States need to wake up and do more, and make the transition and help get the policies in place, help get the financing in place, help GM succeed, and maybe other OEMs get involved. But what's your take on it?
I think so. I mean, I don't think we're behind. I do think China is ahead, if I can put it that way. I think a lot of the countries around the world, my colleagues in other countries, are facing similar challenges to what we're facing here in the United States. Not enough vehicle choices and infrastructure development and working with utilities for upgrades and power and stuff like this. So I think a lot of those challenges are similar. China has had a head start on us for a while. Shanghai was our first city that we electrified, and the government takes a very active role over there in the automotive sector and in regulating areas of major cities that are zero emission zones, and so that naturally creates its own demand there too. So I think that China is definitely further along on the electrification goals, but and here in the U.S. we have some particular legal environmental challenges around independent contractor regulation and stuff like this. But like Russell said, to me, I'm very optimistic to see our large domestic automobile manufacturers get into the electric truck market with the BrightDrop product, or with the Ford E-Transit product, and a lot of other smaller OEMs out there, some of whom we've partnered with already. I think the technology is good, and we're moving forward. But I wouldn't say that we're behind necessarily.
Yeah. Oh God, sometimes you wave the flag you're behind, it helps. And that's why I'm going to go to Jimmy O'Day. But Jimmy O'Day had an interesting tweet, and he said, I don't know what he was responding to, but he said, this is just a fraction of the zero emission trucks and buses being developed. So he was referring to something, I don't know what that is. But you said there are 56 manufacturers with expected vehicle offerings through 2023, tracked by Team Drive to Zero. So this is the kind of question I want to get at. What does that world look like, Jimmy, of the manufacturers moving in this space, and is the U.S. well positioned, or are we wobbly?
Yeah, what the world looks like is every manufacturer is getting in the game. There's new entrants, the established players. Really, the challenge that you alluded to earlier is availability. And so that tweet was referencing to another tweet where last week I was down in Long Beach at a truck conference. And there was 44 different models of electric trucks on display at this single expo. And I think it was probably the largest single collection of electric trucks, probably in North America, at least that I've ever seen. And so that's incredibly inspiring and encouraging on one hand, that there's 44 different models ranging from small delivery trucks all the way up to Class 8 semi-trucks, on these showroom floors. The challenge is getting those vehicles off the showroom floor and into large-scale production, so fleets like IKEA, FedEx can buy them and put them on the road. And that takes policy. There's policies to require manufacturers to actually make certain fractions of electric trucks that we think are important, in addition to the incentives, in addition to the utility programs that form kind of all those puzzle pieces to the puzzle.
Well, that's cool. Jane Lynn, I'm going to give you the last word. And it's going to be kind of a funky question, but I'm really interested in your students. I'm interested, when you're teaching students and your sense of the innovation ecosystem around what we're talking about. And is it robust? I mean, I used to, I was in college. My roommate was very active in the Society of Women Engineers, SWE. And you went to a SWE meeting. You kind of got what they were excited about. Are people excited about EV companies? I know that all the R&D is not yet done in this world. That there's a lot of development going on. But in your world, and you're at University of Illinois in Chicago. I mean, is this a hot topic? Do you have trouble getting students, or are you having to lure them in with candy or something?
No, it's a hot topic. I think the new generation, they are very much into environmental sustainability. And they're much better informed than when I was at that age. And so, and I think because my area is in transportation sustainability, and students are very much interested in electrification of the fleet, the vehicles, and also the autonomous vehicles, which obviously nowadays is a hot topic area. So the combination, some kind of combination of electrified autonomous vehicles, that's really what the students are excited about.
Well, look, I find it a fascinating conversation. I wish we had a lot more time. And, there are other parts of this, when you kind of look at, big data and quantum computing and 5G and, communications of systems talking to one another. And then you attach that to what you're doing with zero emission fleets. And I mean, FedEx is going to be like, Russell's going to be like Wizard of Oz with this huge, array of interconnected stuff all around. But I'm really, really fascinated. Thank all of you for your thoughts on this. I want to thank Dr. Jane Lynn from the University of Illinois, Chicago, Russell Musgrove, Managing Director of Global Vehicles at FedEx Express, Stephen Moelk at IKEA, and he is Project Implementation Manager of Zero Emission Delivery Initiatives, and Jimmy O'Day, Deputy Director of Trucks at CALSTART. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.